As a relocation specialist, one of the most common questions I get from people is how to open an offshore bank account. But what most people don't know is that you might not actually need one. So in this video, I'm going to tell you why I closed 8 of my offshore bank accounts so you can decide if you need one and how to manage your money internationally. If this is the first time we're meeting, I'm Kristin from Traveling with Kristin, and I have been helping people move abroad since 2005. So why did I have so many bank accounts in the first place? Well, there's a lot of reasons why you might want to open a bank account in another country. First and foremost, if you're going to be living there, it can be a lot more convenient to be able to go to a local bank account, have a local debit card, pay lower or zero ATM fees, be able to pay your rent, groceries, things like that in another country. But most of my life, I've been traveling as a digital nomad. So I've spent anywhere from a month or so to a few months or even years in certain other countries. And so while I was living there, I tried to open different bank accounts, and mostly this was for my own convenience, but it's also for my relocation business to understand how to open bank accounts in other countries as a US citizen and then help my clients do the same. Besides living in that country, you might want to open an account in another country to be able to diversify investments, maybe holding different currencies. There's a lot of different interest-bearing accounts and other types of investment vehicles that you can find in other countries. And it could also be for security if you don't feel safe having all of your money in one country, such as the US. I'm getting a lot of people asking, can they move their IRAs and 401ks and savings account and things like that to different countries, just to be able to hedge against any kind of risk that there might be having all of your assets in one country. So over my 20 years of traveling internationally, little by little, I started opening accounts in different places, wherever I was going. Costa Rica, because I spent a lot of years there, and I've made a lot of videos about my banking experience in Costa Rica, so I'll link to those below this one. Bulgaria, Canada, Panama, Malta, Mexico, Nicaragua. I mean, the list goes on. But what I found is that can be a lot of hassle and a lot of headache, more than it's worth, getting any of those benefits from having those accounts there. One of the first reasons why I decided to start closing these accounts in different countries is because I wasn't spending a lot of time there anymore. So the last time I was in Canada was actually in 2020, right before the pandemic started, and I haven't been back there since. So it's a lot of administrative hassle and headache to maintain accounts open in different countries if you're not actively using them. And during the pandemic, when we couldn't travel for a while, I lost access to a lot of my bank accounts. I lost access to my account in Malta, in Nicaragua, in Costa Rica, because if you're not using the accounts often enough, and if you're not logging in, and if you're not physically there, then these things can happen. The accounts can go inactive. You might change your password and then get locked out for some reason. And in the case of Costa Rica, I had to change my password every 3 months, and I had to use my debit card to be able to change my password. And when my debit card expired and I couldn't get a new one because I wasn't in Costa Rica, I then got locked out of my bank account for 2 years and had to go back there and reopen it. And the same thing happened with Nicaragua, where I was in Costa Rica. I crossed over the border into Nicaragua and tried to withdraw money from an inactive bank account, a closed bank account, because I lived there back in 2008 and I own property there. And so I had a bank account there, but over the years, I just wasn't using it very often, and it had a significant amount of money in it, enough to where I crossed the border to go try to get it. But then it took me all day to be able to reopen that account, prove I was who I was with a new passport, and go through the bank management and ultimately be able to withdraw that money. Another account I had back in 2013 was an account in Malta in Euro, when I had a lot of relocation clients moving to Malta. I didn't use the account for a while after leaving Europe, and so the only way that I could actually close the account officially and withdraw the money after my debit card expired was to go to Malta when I was on a cruise. So I was on a cruise in the Mediterranean. We had a few hours, just one day in Malta, and we got off the boat in Valletta. And while everyone else was like out having fun and going on excursions. I was sitting in the bank trying to withdraw the money from my bank account. I did get it. It was a few €1,000 in there. But if you're not going to be physically in that country, even with the internet and online banking, it can be really hard to renew your debit card or get something done through customer service if you ultimately end up having to go into the bank physically. So if you are going to have accounts in different countries, it's better if you're living there or if you're living close by, because you might not have enough money in the account to necessitate traveling to that country to be able to get it out. And that's what happened with my Panamanian bank account. And in many cases with accounts in different countries, they aren't able to send the money to you internationally unless you go into the bank to fill out a wire transfer form, and then flying to Panama to fill out the form to transfer money is not very effective. In addition to the risk of getting locked out of your bank account and having money stuck in different accounts is also the administrative side from a US perspective. If you have bank accounts in foreign countries, if the combined balance is $10,000 or more during the course of the year, then you do need to declare those bank accounts using the FBAR form. So you can get that from the IRS website. You can ask your accountant about it. I'm not an accountant and this is not financial advice, but I do know that, if you have a certain amount of money in those accounts, then you need to report the highest account balance during the year. You need to disclose where you have those bank accounts, the bank information, address, your account number. So it's a lot of extra administration from the US tax perspective side, but it's also a lot of administration for those banks. And so what you'll find as a US citizen especially is that when you go to banks in foreign countries, they might accept everyone except US citizens, or not everyone in the world, but they might have restrictions against citizens of certain countries due to maybe a money laundering risk or additional administrative burdens on the bank. And so that is an issue with foreign banks in relation to the US because of FATCA in the early days of when I was living abroad. And this basically requires foreign banks to report information on US citizens to US authorities. And some banks simply opt out of that with their bank policies. Like, I remember walking into a bank it was in Germany, and they, I was asking what are the requirements to open a bank account. And as soon as they looked at my passport, they were like, no, just basically kicked me out of the bank. So, it's not really good to feel unwanted, especially if you're going to be depositing money into a bank. You want to feel like a valued customer and, not somebody that they don't want to have there because of the extra paperwork on their end and the extra risk. Opening an account in another country, if you don't live there, can be really difficult. In some cases, you can open a business account if you open a foreign company and then that company gets a business account. But in many cases, if you're living there, you need to have residency, a tax ID number, or in some countries, you can go in with a local address, a utility bill, a lease agreement. But depending on the country, that can be pretty frustrating as well to try to open an account, especially as a US citizen. Another thing that can be tough is getting in touch with the customer service, especially if they have a local number or a local 1-800 number and you can't call that number from an international line. So in that case, you need to find WhatsApp support or go through email to get things resolved instead of just being able to pick up the phone and call your bank. Another downside of having a traditional brick and mortar bank account in a different country is that the fees might be higher than what you're used to. So there's a lot of different types of accounts in the US that you can get with low or no monthly fees and minimum transfer costs. For example, if you want to send somebody money on Zelle or use Venmo or an app like that, you can have pretty low or fee-free transfers. But you can also get that in certain areas like in the European area, in the EEA, or within a country, like you can send for free online from one Costa Rican bank account to another. But there could be other types of management fees that can be involved there. And then also fees to send money internationally can be a lot higher. So I recently was in Costa Rica, cost me $90 to send an international wire transfer. And you have to convert that money into US dollars before transferring it abroad. And so they take a big markup. It was like hundreds of dollars on the exchange rate that they cut out of the balance that I was sending. So if you do think you'll be sending money around internationally, then make sure to take a look at what those transfer fees would be, and make sure that if you're opening an account in a local currency, that you also have one in your home currency, such as dollar or euro, so that you can transfer that a little bit easier. Some banks actually do offer more online capabilities than others. So if you are opening an account in a different country, make sure to check with all of the different banks there, see if they accept US citizens or residents with a local ID card, and then find out what types of levels of accounts that they have, and if you can get a premium account or something that where you have a little bit more accessibility to manage things online, so you don't have to be going into the bank branch to fill out documents. Another issue with having bank accounts in other countries is that the amount of insurance varies widely. So in the United States, we have what's called FDIC insurance, which I think is up to $250,000 or more, depending on the type of account you have, of government insurance in case that bank fails. And other countries have this, but I've seen a wide range of the amounts that are protected in case something happens, and it's also limited to certain types of banks and institutions, whereas others are not covered. So I've seen anywhere from zero in certain countries where there's no government insurance. I've seen amounts like $7,000, $12,000 in that countries' currency equivalent to dollars. Countries in Europe and some countries in Southeast Asia have a bit higher limits into the 5 and 6 figures. So be really careful about which country you're opening an account in and what the insurance is on those accounts. And you might want to open accounts in different banks to be able to get that maximum coverage. As I mentioned, I have a whole playlist of videos in Costa Rica from money that I had in an investment account in Costa Rica that was only guaranteed up to $12,000. And I had a lot more in that account and didn't get it all back. So there's something to be said for diversifying to different banks, but also the more accounts you have in different countries, from my perspective, the higher risk that something can go wrong with one of those accounts, whether you get locked out of it and have to go back, or whether that bank fails. And that is not something that is so uncommon. I mean, it definitely does happen. It happens in the US. It happens everywhere in the world. So you might be able to mitigate that risk by opening an account with a national bank that's like a government-backed bank and not going to a private bank. But then in certain places, you might get better investment options, better interest rates. So just be really detail-oriented about that and know what the risks are in case something were to happen. Probably the biggest reason why I decided to close pretty much all of my offshore bank accounts is because as technology has gotten better and more fintech companies have come on the market, there have been better banking options that really solved all of those problems around cost and convenience and not having to go into a brick and mortar bank. And so back in 2012, I found out about this company that used to be called TransferWise, and now it's called Wise, where you can open an account in many different currencies online through an app. There's no brick and mortar bank office. It's actually not a bank at all, but it's a financial company. And so I can leave a link to explain more about how they keep your money secure, but basically they keep it separate from the operating funds of the company. And in some cases on interest-bearing accounts, there could be a type of FDIC, a pass-through insurance on that. So the first thing that appealed to me there was being able to open an account in another country, in another currency, without having to go to a bank, without having to provide a lot of documentation. Of course, you still have to provide some know your customer information and your ID, but you don't have to make 5 trips to the bank coming back and forth with different pieces of paper just to be able to prove that you're living there and you can open an account. With Wise, I had an account in dollars, which is based out of the US. I opened accounts in Canadian dollars and stopped using my account at BMO in Canada. I opened accounts in euros and stopped using my account in Malta. And you can open accounts in yen, and there's a lot of different supported currencies that you can open an account in. So it prevents the need to go into a bank. And then they also don't charge you a markup on the exchange rate when you convert money between two different currencies. So you get the mid-market rate, which is what you would find on Google or xe.com, which is a lot different if you've ever exchanged money at an airport or at some, little sketchy kiosk somewhere in a foreign country and they've advertised their exchange rates outside. You know that there's always some hidden fees there when you go to exchange money. So you don't get that with Wise. So I was getting actually a better exchange rate converting between my US dollar account and my Canadian dollar account than I was exchanging between my US dollar account and my Canadian account at a Canadian bank. So it basically dissolved the need to have any of these bank accounts. And you can also send international transfers online through the app very quickly and also at very low cost. So remember that $90 transfer that I just did in Costa Rica? That same type of transfer on Wise might cost $7, for example. It's also really easy to fund your account. So if you have an account in France and you're from the US and you want to send money to your account in France, the traditional way would be to send a wire transfer from the US to France. So that outgoing wire transfer could cost you $25 to $30, maybe $50, depending on your bank. Then there would likely be an exchange rate markup and charge on the way to your Euro account in France. And then there would be an incoming wire fee on the France side. And so by having a Wise account in dollars and a Wise account in euro, you can just send instantly from your dollar to your euro account and vice versa, getting the optimal exchange rate and very low fees. Having this account also lets you make local purchases. You get a debit card depending on which country you open the account in, and you can get up to about $200 per month in free ATM withdrawals. It's also a card that works really well at places where your US credit card might not be accepted. A local debit card that you can just tap to pay for groceries and things like that works really well because a lot of places, especially in Europe, are PIN card only. It's also instant and free for sending local transfers. So I spent about 6 months in the UK a couple years ago. I opened my account on Wise in Great British pounds, and I was able to pay my rent, pay my gardener, pay my maid, pay for anything locally with my local UK account number. And it was so much easier than going into a bank in the UK and trying to open an account there. I still use it now from Florida. So I have a music production teacher who lives in the UK. And at first he was sending me his PayPal account, which was charging a lot of fees. And I'm like, let me just send it to your UK account. And literally in 1 second, I sent him the money for free from my UK pounds account to his account. I also have been able to pay my virtual assistant who lives in the UK from that account and pay all of my contractors internationally from that account. So you can see how those costs would add up if you're doing it from a traditional bank, whereas if you're sending it from Wise, I can pay people in Colombia, I pay people in the Philippines, I pay people really all over the world just from a few taps of the app. So over the years, from 2012 until now, it really made the need to have other bank accounts in different countries pretty much null and void. Now, of course, you can still have accounts in different countries if you're going to be living in that country or if you're looking to invest in that country. Maybe if you want to buy a house in that country, they want to keep money there. But when it comes to paying rent, paying for local goods and services, you can completely do that from your Wise account. There are also other different types of fintech companies that offer similar online accounts. You can find online money transfer accounts in most countries, in places like Brazil, Mexico, the UK, where there will be a local option, but the requirements could be a bit different. And you get this open access to send money almost anywhere in the world in different currencies for a fraction of the cost and also a fraction of the effort of using traditional banks. So that doesn't mean that I've closed my bank account in the United States. I still run my business here. I have business and personal accounts in the US, but having an account like Wise in addition to my US account has replaced the need to have 10 different bank accounts in different countries. The good news is that you don't have to actually live abroad to be able to receive the benefits of this type of account. So I will leave my referral link in the description below if you'd like to check it out. You can also get your first transfer for free up to 500 British pounds or equivalent. Thanks to Wise for partnering with me on this video. And if you want to see more banking adventures in Costa Rica, watch this video next.